Welcome to the Beyond the Reef podcast, where I talk to experts and researchers in the reef aquarium hobby, discussing a broad range of topics from corals and reef biology to water chemistry and equipment. We take a deep dive into our guests' methods, techniques, and top reef keeping tips. My name is Adam Sutherland, and I am the owner-operator of Frag Garage Corals, based out of British Columbia, Canada. Today, I am joined by John Yull of Reefworks Corals, and he is based out of Austin, Texas, has run a maintenance company out of Austin called Fishworks for a very, very long time. So he's had tons of experience with many awesome builds over the years. John is very prolific on the USA Coral Show circuit. So you can go to his website at reefworkscorals.com and then go look at events, and there are a whole bunch of events that he looks like he's traveling pretty nonstop over the next year for coral shows. So definitely cool to go pick up some of his pieces in person, but you can also purchase them through his website. I think it's safe to say that John has lived many lives as a reef keeper, and his vast experience is definitely prevalent in this conversation. There's a little continuity error a little ways into this video where my video is going to change and degrade in quality, but no biggie. It's all about the conversation. Thanks to the direct support of hobbyist Bobby Heath, I'm happy to bring this podcast to you absolutely ad-free. If you want to support us, the best things you can do are like, share, write us a review, and definitely subscribe. Not enough people are hitting subscribe. And if you have any comments or questions or suggestions for future guests, please reach out. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did with John Yull of Reefworks Corals. All right, man. Well, thanks for doing this with me.
You're very welcome.
Yeah. And thanks again it was nice meeting you at Aquashella and checking out your setup. You brought a lot of stuff. You do a lot of shows, hey? It sounds like you do a lot of shows.
That's my main source of selling coral. Is doing all the shows.
It's kind of fun. I mean, a little bit of traveling, some long drives.
Some very long drives, yes. Like it's California wrap was like 20 hours, and then I've been to Orlando. I think we did 2 Orlandos this year. So that was wrap, and then Aquashella. Well, that was Daytona. So that was 17, 18 hours.
Crazy. So. That's like kind of like its own like thing to prepare for. It's like one thing shipping corals, but like packing them for a show.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, I can't remember if you told me, but do you pack every coral individually, or are they in trays in racks and stuff?
So the main thing is we do. I have the racks that fit in the tanks that you're probably like 12 by 15, but they basically fit into a Coleman cooler that's a 24-pack cooler. So each rack is individually in its own cooler. So if you do lose something, you're hopefully only losing partial of what you're taking. But we take 8 to 10 racks on the big shows, and then maybe 4 to 6 on other shows. On a smaller show. The night before, I'm always I'll place all the corals that we're going to take on the racks, and I've kind of done my sump for one of my systems where I can lay that out and then position everything. And then when I get, I'll get back that evening before we're going to leave, and then load them straight into the coolers and off we go.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's the last thing. We load the van. I have a Sprinter van for my job, so we load everything in, and then the coolers and the water from the systems is the last thing, and then we hit the road.
Wow, that's just a different way of like, we don't have a lot of shows in Canada, so like the next closest one to here would be such a ridiculously long drive. Over the Rocky Mountains,
Right. With being in Texas, I'm basically like I can go either way, and it's about 17 to 20 hours, like max. But
fairly central.
I'm gonna do Wrap New York this year, and I'm gonna fly, so that'll be the first time I've done that. So
whole other thing to experience.
30 hours is like no, that's not gonna. So.
We were talking about, it was kind of funny, I guess. We figured we have a very similar garage style aquaculture setups with a similar amount of volume, but you seem to have about half the space that I have. But
but you probably have more square footage than that. So I have three systems. One of them is 560 gallons, so it's 10 feet by 3 feet by 30 inches.
Pretty deep.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I came across that tank for free in my maintenance business. So it kind of fell in my lap. So that was the beginning of doing all of this. And takes up a lot of room. And then my other system, I have two 310s that are linked together. And they're 8 feet by 30 by 25. And then I have two sumps. One's about 160 that's LPS. And then one is just my skimmer and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so pretty good water volume. I mean,
yes,
like your stability is probably good because you probably have, I don't know, like the actual square feet is probably less than mine, but the gallons is probably like twice what I have in some of my systems.
Which hurts for dosing and that kind of stuff. Or like, like the moonshiners where I did the math on my fluoride and it was like, oh my God, what am I doing every month? Like it's just, it's $63 just in fluoride.
Yeah, that's a lot. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that. I mean, sometimes I think like, more water volume, you would think you have to dose less trace to it, but there's other things that are pulling those trace elements more than just the corals, right?
That's true. It's probably just the amount of coral that's in there too. So I wasn't thinking about that. Yeah, but yeah, like several hundred mLs a day of A and B, and then like 11,000 of Kalkwasser that's going in there. So that's my way is I'm 2-part dosing.
Yeah.
And then supplementing with Kalkwasser on the top.
Are you doing the calc like at night only, or is it 24/7?
I do more at night and then taper it down during the day, but I never stop. Like it'll keep going. But it's about a third of what I do overnight.
Yeah. Cool.
And I haven't noticed, I can't say I've noticed it really going up or changing that much the more I do at night. Like I think I would have to do way, way more than what I'm doing.
Yeah, like you think it hits kind of a saturation point? Because if calc's kind of interacting with the carbonic acid, I wonder if there's a little bit of a limit or a bit of a plateau point maybe where it can only react so much and then maybe there's precipitation or something like that.
Yeah, maybe so. And I'm not doing, I feel like I'm still on the low end, but when I start bumping it up, I notice that my alkalinity starts swinging around a little bit more than if I just keep it at where it's at. And I kind of go down to like 8.1, 8.2, and one of my systems will be up to like 8.5 to 8.6 max, and the other one is about 8.4, like lights out.
Yeah,
this kind of time. So
that's pretty.
And I'm happy with that. That works fine.
Yeah.
I kind of shoot for like 7.5, 7.7 on alkalinity.
Okay, so you don't really you don't like going really much above 8. Is there any particular reason for that?
I've always done 7.5.
Yeah.
So it just, and I always say one of the best periods of time when I was, that I've been doing stuff, my out was at like 6, 8, 7 for a long period of time. And I kept adding to it, and it kind of stayed there. So I was just happy staying at that point.
Yeah.
My maintenance clients, I'll set it at between 8 to 8.3.
Yeah, because you kind of gives you a little more leeway for a possible swing because you're not there every day.
I'm not there every 2 days.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I guess that kind of tracks in some ways because if the ocean's around 6.7, 6.8, then it's closer to that. But I mean, there's the whole relationship to what alkalinity really is and what we're testing and all of that stuff. But
agreed.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think I would agree. Like just in a very subtle way, I've noticed that. Anything kind of past 8.5, I don't find things look as good or like more issues seem to happen. But that kind of sweet spot for me is like the 8 to 8.3 kind of. Yeah,
which I'll hit like the one system. I have one system set at 7.5 and one at 7.7 just to kind of experiment with it. And the 7.7 will go up to like 8.1, 8.2 sometimes. Like it'll be like, I'll get an alert on the apex and I'll be like, okay. And then the next test, it'll go down. Yeah. But I do test a whole bunch. Like I'm doing, I think I'm up to like 8 tests on the Trident every day.
That's a lot.
But so I was doing the 6.33, but somebody posted the kind of little hack on Apex on the local to just add in extra tests during the day. So basically when the lights are on and when I really am paying attention to it, I've got extra tests going in there at that time.
So
And
it's a way of adding tests to the schedule without having it do the extra magnesium, calcium.
Correct.
It just adds the extra.
Yeah, so you could actually do 2 calcium, 2 alkalinity, and 5, 6, 7, 8.
Yeah.
I'm
good with
magnesium and calcium.
Yeah, I'm good with 1 calcium and magnesium a day.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
yeah, most
it's the alkalinity is what I care about more. But actually something I've been on a little bit of a train thinking about recently, and there's a guest I want to get on to kind of get into depth on this, is alkalinity timing and the dosing of your timing. Like, do you dose your 2-part throughout the day, or do you kind of have your dosing schedule set up so that it kind of correlates with the higher growth periods?
Right. I started off with the Trident dosing. And with that, it gives you the option to change it at night. So I've really tweaked that around. So mine does drop down at night and it's higher during the day, which gives me pretty much a plateau, like a straight line most of the time of alkalinity. So yes, I alter that. And the other thing that I do is on the Trident dosing, I do alkalinity and calcium. I do the dosing to the test of the alkalinity. So I'm not adjusting my calcium from the calcium test. So that I get exactly equal amounts of both all day long. So it's actually, I'm not getting out of that ratio between, the calcium alkalinity dosing.
Yeah. And you find they stay in the right kind of bionic balance?
Yeah. For as far as I know, as far as I can tell. And then in that I have the codes that basically if my out goes above a certain amount, then it'll shut it off and the dosing off. And then also on the calcium, if the alkalinity or the calcium go too high, it'll shut it off. And then it'll keep it off until the next test.
Okay.
So that's just another safety thing that I've found with doing the running the Trident, running the dosing off of that.
I mean, that's relying pretty heavily on the Trident, though. Do you still test with manual kits pretty regularly? Yeah.
Once a week, at least once a week. So
or if you see something abnormal, I'm sure too.
Yes. Yeah. Most definitely. If I can tell something's going kind of wonky almost instantly. So I probably have 30 Tridents that I run for clients.
So you like a Trident maintenance technician, basically.
Yes. So I've got maybe 50 Apexes running, and 30 of those have Tridents.
Yeah.
And so I'm so used to it, and I'm on my Apex all day long for my, I have a maintenance company that I've done for like 25 years.
Yeah, and I want to get into that soon too.
Yeah. So with that, I've just become so I'm when someone picks up their phone and, I'm the one that's like Apex is the first thing that I'm looking at when I get it. And it drives me crazy. But at the same time, I couldn't do what I do without it, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I've done it the other way.
Best, worst employee.
Yes. Yeah. I hate it, but I have no choice. I love it. And it has made it that I can do acro tanks for clients. I can do things where, between most of my clients, I have a Wise camera that can spin 360 and pan and tilt sitting in their sump, next to their sump. So if I get an alarm, I can jump on that and check what's going on before I start heading to their house.
Yeah, to save you a trip. Totally.
Yeah. Because sometimes I can sit there and adjust. I can keep trying their ATK or their top off, whichever way they have it, and make sure everything's working correctly.
Yeah.
Or I can see it happening rather than driving for an hour.
Yeah, that's pretty handy. So, about the maintenance company. So you said you've been doing it for 25 years. How many systems would you say you maintain currently, or at the peak of, the most you've ever taken on? I'm constantly busy, Monday through Friday, and I do between 6 to 9 clients a day. Wow.
And a lot of those are weekly. I mean, I have some clients that it's twice a week, just to clean the glass. It just really depends on the client.
I couldn't be bothered.
Right.
Get John to do it.
They just got back from London for the for Christmas, and it's like I have keys to all these houses, and I've lots of fun clients, and that's the main part that I enjoy the most is the people that you get to meet and hang out with at their house, on a weekly basis.
Interesting relationship building, as kind of is the reef hobby in general. It's
exactly.
Like you kind of get to connect with people that maybe would be a little bit outside of your normal, range of friend group or whatever.
Yes,
and it's super cool. Yeah.
Very like famous people, politicians, like that kind of stuff. That's cool. That you're like, but yeah, I've been doing that for a long time. So that's. I worked at a store for a few years and started picking up clients. And basically when my daughter was born, I quit working at the store and then did full time doing maintenance. And she'll be 22 this year.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. There you go. So what would you say, I mean, I guess running a maintenance company and having that many systems you are, largely responsible for, you must have learned a lot from all these tanks because, I mean, most of us just have, like most hobbyists might have one or two systems, or, in my case, I have about 5 separate sets of water chemistry I maintain. But like, you probably have learned a lot from, I mean, I'm sure you have a formula for what works, but you must have tried some different things and sort of learned from it. Is there anything particular you kind of point out or mention?
What's funny is that I could start 2 identical tanks at the same time, and
equipment.
A year later, same equipment. I'm basically now doing these cookie cutter almost like systems where it's usually like a 310. I have custom sumps done. I have old Apex Radions, and in a year's time, one will be just flourishing like crazy, and one will just be plodding along and doing okay. And that's the part I don't always understand. Like, I don't know whether it's the environment of the house that could be it, or the business, or something like that. And the beauty is, like, I have clients that I've been doing their reef for over 20 years. So I can just put rock in their sump and then move that into a new system.
Yeah.
So that to me is one of the easiest things that I can quick start somebody's. But even doing that, it can do really well or just kind of do okay.
Yeah, but you kind of hope, like that you can essentially take a piece of an established system and kind of transplant that.
Throw it in there.
Yeah.
I've found it works if I'm given the chance to not turn the lights on and get some rock in the sump and get it rolling for a month or two. Like, I've found that kind of quick starts a little bit easy, but that's mostly not at all the chance. It's like, get this thing rolling, get it going, and try and make it look as good. And with that, there are certain things like, look in ChemiClean or something where it's like a client's tank is not looking good. You have to make it look good quick.
Yeah, so that's a lot of pressure, really, in a way, because especially if you kind of have a track record and a reputation, you're expected, to have nice, clean, sparkling tanks all the time.
Exactly.
But like most of these systems, have you started them from, like, obviously you've seeded them with some established rock, but have you done aquascapes with dry rock?
So I have a lot of old dry rock, like real live rock, but that I've just gotten from systems. So sometimes I'll buy it in, and sometimes I'll use existing stuff that I've already got. But yes, starting from fresh.
So what's your kind of trick for getting a good bacteria biome established in these tanks as fast as possible and getting through that algae cycle?
Really just the seasoned rock that I'm putting in there. It's kind of like, it's weird. Like, I have one that's been going for like 4 months now, and that green cyano, just today I was there and it just started kicking in. And, I'm gradually bringing the lights up on there, and I guess that's kicking in from there. But I also trying to avoid doing the ChemiClean if I can. But yeah, just really just bringing stuff in from other tanks is my main system. I'll sometimes put in a bottled bacteria, but usually not. And I've just actually, from some of the podcasts, like, I've just started trying some of the bottles and the Zeovac and that kind of stuff, trying to add in some of that. on my systems just to try and experiment and see what that's doing.
Yeah, I think it's beneficial to just diversify the bacteria that's going in, and like obviously if a new system like water and it's like freshly made salt water is going to have very little bacteria,
right?
So, and then if you're seeding with a little rock from another system, like how fast is that bacteria going to actually coat your systems and create those biofilms, right?
And that's where I was saying, like, if I can leave it for a while before I really start diving into it and turning the lights on and go in that route. But really, there's not that many other options, really, without bringing in, like, chunks of live rock and putting that on the existing rock that, their new rock and doing it.
But then that's the whole other risk is that you're bringing in some kind of algae or pests or something.
Exactly.
And you don't want to go down that road either.
Right.
Do you ever have any... sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I usually don't turn a skimmer on for at least like 6 months.
Yeah.
Is my other thing with new tanks. Like, they'll have the skimmer and they're always like, why aren't we running this? And, well, it's not helping at this point.
Yeah.
I've found until you're 6 months to 9 months in that kind of area, I won't even run it at all. Unless something weird starts happening.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say, what about running it just really, really low so it's barely skimming anything?
I'll do that too. Yeah, I'll do it, but have it open as far as I can, and just to kind of help more than anything, just for the aeration and that hopefully some pH boost. I tried experimenting with that in my systems too, and I never really noticed a big bump.
Yeah.
Bringing in air from outside or either way, it's I don't know. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, I've tried bringing in air from outside for a while, and I didn't really notice a difference in pH in the system. But and I mean, there's risks with the air from outside too. The last podcast I did with Anan was saying that he was getting some carbon, pollens and things were coming in.
Yeah, and that's probably where I was like thinking that too. I'm like, maybe that's not the best idea. And if we're using, cork or something, then do we need that side of it too?
Yeah.
It just, especially here, like we get so many pollens going around. Like cedars kicking in now. Is that going to have an effect on your reef? I
mean, so might be doing something. Everything's doing something, and I think that's why, like you say, you could set up two systems that are exactly the same. All the same equipment, same sort of method, and one will, do better than the other.
And not even like in a house and in a business. Like the two I'm thinking of are both, one's in a surgeon's, lobby, and one is in an apartment complex in their lobby. So it's like these vast rooms where there's not this, whole bunch of people in a small room or something.
Yeah, because that's another factor too, right? Is how many breathing mouths
humans,
are in a room.
Pets, exactly. And I deal with that to some degree on, people's houses where I will try and dose in cork or something as well. If I find that that's, chronically low all the time. So
So what are you using for your 2-part solution?
I buy Fritz. Fritz sell a bucket, like 35-pound bucket that I've been using for several years, of sodium carbonate and calcium chloride.
And do you add trace to it?
No. For clients, I'm started to experiment with, like I'll put in fuel, like the Seacom fuel, because I've noticed some of the tanks now as they're getting bigger and bigger. I'm just kind of, I don't know the best way to get around that. That's an easy one on a tank that I'm at like once a week or something, or once every 2 weeks. We've started now that I can find those things out. Like I've started doing ICPs on some of my clients' tanks, and just their trace elements are just like bottomed out. But they're still having good growth. But that's part of why it's bottoming out. So I don't know about the better way to do that cost wise for them, or they're not going to put stuff in. So fuel's one of the ones that I thought of, but then the aminos and so on, and
remind me what fuel is. Fuel's a Brightwell product, right? Or is
Seacom.
Seacom? Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. And is it like a trace element mixture along with some kind of Like what
Yeah,
makes it what's with the word fuel?
right. I think it's the aminos that are in
Yeah.
there, because when you use it, it's that green,
Yeah.
like what's that, AB plus?
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
not
Yeah, the Red Sea AB plus.
the
Yeah.
Red Sea. Yeah, but not as green, but it has that sweet kind of smell to it. So I have a client, and I put a gallon on there, and I'm dosing it in every day. So we're kind of waiting 2 months, and then I'm going to send in ICP on his tank and see if it's helping, because that could also help. I could go that route, or like I'll see, but there was nothing that I could find was like a all-in-one. Put it on a doser and help. I still do weekly water changes on all my clients.
What percentage generally?
I'll probably do like on a 300 gallon, maybe like 20 to 30 gallons.
Okay.
Like every week.
So around 10% of the actual water volume. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's on a weekly basis that I'm doing that. So, and I use reef crystals as my salt.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. It seems like a lot of people are kind of like advocating for reef crystals again.
Right.
Which is interesting. What do you find the kind of alkalinity mixes at on average?
9-ish to 10, I think,
so
somewhere in the 9-ish range.
Yeah.
And I've found that, I'm in a predicament because I'm using about 1,000 gallons of salt a week that I'm going through for clients.
Yeah.
So, like, Tropic Marin probably wouldn't work because it could go in and out of, there might not be any available, and I'm kind of now changing something else. So with reef crystals, it's always there.
That's true. Yeah.
So I use that, but when I've done ICPs, there's certain things. There's not a lot of the traces that you would want. Finer and trace that are really there. So you're getting some of it, but not enough that I would want. On mine, I'm doing just an automatic water change through the Apex on my systems here. So I do like 10 gallons every night on both systems.
Oh, every night.
Just because that's I don't think there's a way to set that up where it will do every other night.
Yeah.
There is. I don't know. I'd have to look into it.
Yeah.
But I'm fine with that because, like I say, I go through 4 to 5 boxes of salt a week. So, but I also have, my other part on that is I have a DI system that's like the big water softener tanks.
Yeah.
So it's cation, anion, and then 2 mixed beds. And 100% in is 100% out. So whatever comes, pressure that comes out of your faucet is what I'm getting is the purest of water.
Oh, okay.
That's what they use, like chip manufacturing, dialysis machines, like those kind of things. Like that's how they're getting that water. It costs me a lot, but
I was going to say that's probably an investment, but I mean the amount of water you're going through and the rate you need to be able to produce it is that's a lot.
I actually messaged Andrew Sandler because he was talking about his RO system, and I'm like, for what you're doing and the cost of this, like this would be the best way to do it. And if you look at some of the unique corals, they're using an RO system and then going through the same system that I have. So they're doing that. But for me, like, I feel like I'd be wasting 1,000 to 2,000 gallons of water a week. And I have a hard time with that.
Yeah, I have a hard time with, like, there are certain aspects to the hobby that are kind of wasteful, and I mean, I try to be kind of aware of those things. Actually, one thing I do for shipping is I get as many repurposed coolers as possible.
Oh yeah.
There's a couple of like medical clinics. There's a Botox clinic that saves their coolers for me, so I go and pick them up. Oh wow,
that's awesome.
Yeah, so I try to get as many.
Botox on the label or something?
Yeah, so I have to, like, it says dry ice refrigerate, so I got to make sure those are all scribbled out or covered up. Yeah.
Oh, I was hoping it was going to say Botox or something if someone's getting their stuff.
Well, one of the times I grabbed one of these Botox coolers and it still had the dry ice in it, and I didn't know, and I opened it in the garage and I had this big pH drop. Because dry ice, when it evaporates, I guess it's like
just sucks it all out.
Carbon dioxide production, mega. So, that was a funny little lesson. Not something to think about.
Yeah, but that's just something that I've done. I think I've done that for at least 15 years.
Cool.
It costs me I think it went up. It's somewhere in the range of like $650 in exchange. And that's about every 3 to 4 weeks that I'm going through that. Depends on my usage. We have really hard water. Like my TES is probably upper threes kind of area, to 400 where I'm at.
Yeah, I mean,
so,
I've got some of the best water in the world here in this part of Canada. So,
yeah. I remember Matt V saying that he's in Portland, and their TDS out of the tap was like 20. So he had that same system, but their max is like every 3 months you have to exchange it, no matter whether you've used it all or not. So he was always getting that 3 months out of it, but I don't. Nowhere near.
Yeah.
So yes, that works on all my systems. So I've always got 300 gallons mixed up. So for pulling out 10 gallons a night, it's not.
And I guess you're topping up all the ATOs when you do your maintenance too. Like they don't have their own RO systems, or do some of your clients have them?
So, and yet another thing that everybody's always anti about, like I have a lot of systems that are actually hooked straight up to an RO system to their top off. I have a few things in line there to prevent that.
Yeah, I do that too.
And I've got mine too. Mine's set up, but the Apex solenoid on everything. And then I actually found a commercial RO system like installer. They had this little, and I found it on Amazon, but it's just this little valve that sits on the floor, and the water goes in and the water comes out. But in the bottom, it has this little like sponge. And if it gets wet sitting on the floor, it expands and pops open this valve and shuts off your system. So it's not relying on anything electronic to like pick up on a leak or anything. It's just if you get water in there. So I'll also put an RO in like a acrylic box and then put a leak detector in the bottom of that. And then also one of these things. So if anything starts leaking, it's going to shut it off right at the mains.
Yeah, I like mechanical switches like that. Like I still use float switches along with some other sensors and stuff. But actually, you'd probably be interested in this when I get the result. I just sent in 2 ICPs, and I had 2 reverse osmosis tests for each of them. So I actually took the first sample as soon as the RO unit came on.
Right.
And then I let the RO run for like a few gallons, and then I got the next sample.
The Shane Backer.
Yeah, he got me thinking about that. That being said, I don't think it's going to matter as much with my water, but I'm curious if that water in that first couple of gallons, or even the first, could be the first, I don't know, like liter or something, maybe is not quite as good. Because I mean, I have a unit that does a back flush, but it doesn't run for very long. Like it can't be doing much.
No, I don't think so. And I don't do anything along that, because all these things are doing is just adding for evaporation. Like I don't have anybody that it's mixing. I have a couple that are old setups that I did where we have a 60-gallon tank that mixes up salt. But I kind of went away from doing that, once after I'd done those setups, because it just, the worry of something happening to that. Like you have a container full of salt and it's just filling up to a float valve. And there's a lot of risk, in my opinion.
Yeah, it doesn't look good for you if you have some kind of spilling incident in a, I don't know what, some of these clients probably have multi-million-dollar homes, and if they're hiring you, and
exactly.
Yeah, you can't be messing around.
One thing I do now on every install that I'm involved, from like architects up, is we drop the slab 2 inches below the tank, like the footprint of the tank, and then put a floor drain in the bottom.
Yeah, that's smart.
So I get to use the floor drain for water changes for the RO system, but then if there's any kind of slow leak or anything starts going on, or anything, and I can take all my sumps and I put a bulkhead at the very top corner, so that if that starts filling, it's going down the drain. Okay. Anything that I can do to prevent floors getting messed up or having issues. So,
cool. Well, let's talk about your systems at home a little bit, because I imagine your systems at home kind of get your fine tweaking. So, are you doing regular ICPs and messing around with trace elements much?
Yeah, I try to do every month. So like every month to 6 weeks ish, depending on how I'm doing it. I'm doing the moonshiners. but still doing the water change side of it.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah.
I feel like sometimes I'm playing around too much, which I'm sure you're like
We've all
sitting
been there.
around. Yeah. I actually had a discussion today with one of the store owners, and I was like, well, maybe I should just like one do the moonshiners and one do like the Jason Fox, where it's like I do nothing besides the water change every week, like 100 gallons, and just see, like, keep doing the ICPs and see what goes on and how the growth and how the coloration look.
Yeah.
That's the kind of test, because going down this rabbit hole of all this stuff. It's just,
And
I love it because I'm interested,
Yeah.
But,
and it's nice to see results, but then sometimes it's nice if you can compare to a system that's not doing that, and if it's doing pretty much just as well, who knows?
And as you've said in the past, like, we used to get results, like we had good growth, we had good color, we had, like your home wrecker would look good, and that, you would pull those colors, but is the fine tweaking really, I feel like it is, but without doing what I was just saying, you really don't know. Yes, in your mind, you're like, yes, I'm doing this, and I see those changes. So but like like the blues and the purples, I mean, are just phenomenal right now that I see.
And that's probably from being on top of the fluorine and potassium kind of levels. And to me, that's amazing. Like I'm struggling to hit like 1 on fluoride, and I'm at every ICP I like up the dose per day, and I'm like I'll go up like 10 to 15 mLs, and I think I'm at like 60 mLs per system per day. Wow.
And I'm at like below 1.
What product are you using for it? It's the Moonshiner product?
I was doing Moonshiners, and then I'm using the Fornamarin now, because I buy it's 1,000 mLs through Coral View. So, I mean, it was at, what's that? Is it? I don't know. It's $20 a bottle for.
I guess it depends on the
mLs.
concentration too, right? Because I don't know. Maybe the Moonshiners. Like I know the Captivate fluoride. I calculated it to be, I think, 5 or 10 times stronger than.
Really?
Yeah, than the Fauna, but it's in a smaller bottle. So like you got to do the math and the calculation.
Yeah.
But
now, somebody, a friend of mine, put me on to the Loud Wolf. They do a sodium that, they do a lot of people use that for the nitrate and stuff. It's just a chemical company, but they do a sodium fluoride. I think it's sodium fluoride that's like a powder.
Interesting.
And so they were telling me the mix per gallon to mix that up at. And it's pretty cheap.
I mean, that's the thing. A lot of these things are really cheap. If you get them at and then if your math is good too, I mean, that's the thing you really need to check. But I mean, mostly we're paying for bottles of water. Most of these products we're just paying for water.
So I feel like you would have to, make a gallon and then just run that for a month in between your ICPs, and then see what your result is, and then you could adjust dosage, and but we're just tinkering around. But like, say, when I was like, I'm doing. And it's, in the scheme of things, it's not that much. But when you're just adding up the fluoride and then like the manganese and all those traces, you're just like buying more and more bottles of it. And it just I love it. It's the system. It's just
it's a great marketing system in a lot of ways. It's because you kind of are on a bit of a subscription to it, and you worry if you discontinue, things are going to get worse. And
right. Well, it's like the flatworm stuff and all that stuff. Like everybody, the people that have been on it, like I've never done it, but I know people that have been on it, and then they're like, "Well, I stopped, and everything looks like shit." So you kind of that same thing. Like, what if you drop on one thing? And
I have a theory on the flatworm stop discontinuing that product. I don't think it's the sort of like herbal botanical kind of component of that stuff. I think it's just the fact that if you're dosing it every day, it has a lot of potassium in it, iodine, a few other trace elements. And, as we know from like the Moonshiner system, it's the daily dosing of elements that makes things do well. So potentially if somebody discontinues flatworm stop, that might have been the reason that their iodine was sitting at a good level or their potassium was sitting at a good level.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
That makes sense to me that they'd see a bit
Not
of a
whatever
detriment.
their secret sauce is that's in there.
Yeah. Who frickin' knows? But yeah, I dose a little bit of it still. I cut the dose in half because a few of my trace elements were getting a little bit high. And I after seeing an ICP of that stuff, I did those were some elements that were in it. The manganese was in it for sure. So yeah.
Now, when you were just saying that, it made me think, like, I've tried the ATI Essentials, their 2-part, which has the traces in there, and then also the ESV. But I found that being at, like, one of my systems, like the 600 gallon is about 500 mLs a day, and the 310s are at about 700 to 800, kind of depending on the day.
Yeah.
I feel like when I was using those products, nothing was coming out weird on the ICP, but things weren't looking right. And then I went back to just the straight bare chemicals, and everything kind of like flattened back out and seemed to be okay. And I couldn't put my finger on what's wrong, but it's like coloration, polyp extension. And there was nothing that was like, whoa, this is way elevated. But I feel on an all-in-one kind of thing that you're obviously, because moonshine varies like every single month that you do it, you're varying what you're dosing. That I think if you're putting a set amount of something in, at some point, one of those things is going to be elevated and kind of causing an issue. But I never found what it was, or whether it was just a combination of a few things, you know. But also on that, when you were asking about the 2-part, all my clients are on 2-part. So that's why I go through gallons and gallons of 2-part on a monthly basis. So for me, keeping the same for myself means that I've always got it on hand.
Yeah.
Is there better? Maybe.
Yeah, because you can just mix up huge batches of the exact,
it's
concentration.
5.6 pounds per 5 gallons is what that was like the BRS recipe. So I've always done the same thing, and I use it. I used to do calcium reactors 15, 20 years ago. And I found every time I went back to my clients, it was either not dripping, not bubbling. And this was before all the newer kind of ways of doing it. So it just became so frustrating that I just quit that and just went to 2-part.
Calcium reactors are kind of prone to having blocked lines and like little issues, just because you're dealing with these like tiny little lines of tubing and then you're breaking down this like calcium carbonate, so you've got this kind of potentially and then there's some of it gets kind of sludgy, and I mean I guess it's a love-hate thing.
If you're in there every day, so it's like oh, I see it's working, and I'm sure that's one of your things that you're always like double checking. Like there's certain things I walk in and I'm first like looking and making sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. But on my side, I've always found that to be ended up being such a big issue that I just went with, especially after the Trident came out. I could Trident and a dose, and everything's getting dosed and done correctly. So
that's nice for sure.
I was another one that I thought to bring up to you. Speaking of Tridents, I use the ABC reagents. And you were talking about getting the mix your own. Part of that, I think, with the DI, the distilled, is that I don't think Jonas is such a perfectionist, that the guy that owns it, that I don't think he would trust someone's RO to be.
So just to elaborate for anyone listening, we were talking about how that ABC is supposed to be mixed with distilled water specifically.
Correct.
Which I was like, well, what's really different about that from really well produced RO?
I haven't asked him, but also I like those bottles. And then every time I mix them up, I've got a brand new bottle that's sterilized and
sealed,
and then I just mix it up and sealed, and I mix it up on that one. But I mean, I'm buying 16 gallons at a time and going through, and then I just do a monthly subscription to my clients for the reagents. And what I love about that is that I'm just putting every time I'm there or every other time, I'm filling everything up. So I'm never letting them run down below halfway. to me, that's when you start running into issues, when you start getting low on the bottle.
Definitely, especially the calcium. I find you notice that more. Yeah.
Right. And what was I going to say?
Topping up with the reagents.
With the Apex ones, I would end up being in this position where I'm making another run back to a client just so I can change out the reagent.
Yeah.
Because there's no way that I'm going to ask my clients to, open the drawer and then change the bottle, and then they're going to crease the tubes going in. And
totally. And those sometimes the tube can fall into the bottle too. And there's so many little things that can happen.
So clients, most of my clients do not want that at all. Yeah. They want nothing to do with any. They want to look at the tank and that's it. So, but I go through, and that's why I can do more tests, because I'll just buy, it's not that expensive. I'll just buy 2 to 4 gallons of A, and then I can run more alt tests for how much.
Yeah, more of the A. Totally. Because sometimes I'll let my calcium and magnesium bottles just run out, and I'll just use up the rest of the A for a couple weeks, because I can test calcium. It's fine. It's But I have found, like, if you do that, I mean, I can strip down and take apart a Trident now, and I always carry one in my van. Like, that's how much they kind of mess up. But I've found if you let it sit, that stuff just dries up in the hose, and then you're cleaning out all the hoses and going through the whole thing. So more than a couple weeks, I feel like that's when you start getting some of that crystallization. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. But yes, I wanted to bring that up, because I go through so much of it.
So you think he's just being a little, like, nitpicky about it, and maybe it's fine to use RO.
Well, but do you know what he's like? His actual real job is that he's a chemist, and he takes compounds and breaks them down and finds out what's in them. Like, that's his real job.
Wow.
So that's what he did with the Apex reagents, and then he tweaked it. He did all the tweaking of his reagents, like knowing what they did wrong and how they did it, and he's just dials it in to where it's kind of perfect,
So would you say that the ABC is actually a more stable version of the reagent?
That's his claim. His claim, and I kind of, like, he said that their reagent is kind of on a knife's edge, and Apex now are never going to talk to me again. But his point,
they got enough of the market. It's fine.
Yeah, they do. that their reagents were on this knife's edge. What that means, I don't honestly know, but taking it from him, but where he kind of stabilized his a little bit better in doing it. So, and then
if he says distilled, I'll get distilled water. It's fine.
Yeah, it's what $4, and you've got enough to do the kit. But throw, like, the price wise, like, getting the 4-gallon kit is well worth it.
Yeah, that's good to know. So, okay, well, let's talk about corals a little bit, because that's probably the thing we're the most excited about. For sure. Something, I mean, we kind of touched on this, and I don't know if we'll get, like, really anywhere in particular with it, but you've had a pretty good amount of incidences of, like, green fluorescent protein infections on some of your corals.
Right.
And I'm curious if you kind of have any theories as to how that starts, or, if there's anything that kind of gives it a higher probability.
No. So I have the one that it happened to first, which I called College Fun, but it was kind of a purple and pink millie that pretty high up in the tank, getting a lot of flow. So some of the tips would get, kind of beat up a little bit every now and again. And then one day it just started showing the green fluorescence on there. Which is all well and good, but then trying to get something from that was, it's not an easy thing to make it into a. Yeah,
you need to isolate a small enough piece to kind of.
It's kind of split that you can get both colorations going. But that was it's probably 18 months ago, and I've taken those pieces and moved them along. But what I've found is the colony grows, and it's probably a good 12, 14 inches across, like, all around it. That protein, the green, is popping up on all the new branches.
Oh, crazy.
Like, it's not just one little area. Like, a new branch will come up, and it'll either be the regular branch, or it will be the new, the protein infected branch.
Like, it almost seems like it's not infused into its DNA, but it's sort of maybe
in the zooanthella, I guess.
Throughout the colony.
So it's moving, and I don't know how the zoanthella's moving through the colony or from one side to the other.
Yeah.
And then I sent you a picture that it's kind of very subtle, but it was more of like a green slime or green, like that bright neon green. And now I've got in the same colony, like 2 inches from that, I have a lighter, paler green and then pink showing up in the middle of all the mix of the original color and the green, the lighter green, and then pinks on some of the coralites and the tips, the actual tips are like split like pink and white, pink and green, on there. Like, and I took a few of those and I put them onto plugs now, and I'm going to try and see what they come up
if you have a third color. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, I think
it's varying.
Yeah, my kind of theory on it is like the more corals we have from different parts of the world, and the more they're sort of all just sitting in the same system, like the chances are that something is compatible, with the biology of another coral. And I think the more of those, like, especially if we're talking about those green fluorescent proteins, the more of those corals that you have that are just like super, super bright yellow green, there's a better chance that they're going to bounce around and agree with something else.
I had a client that we haven't added anything in her tank for several years. It's just this wall-to-wall acro tank that, and she has the worldwide coral yellow tips, the stag.
Yeah.
And it's that blue coloration. And then I noticed one branch with the green fluorescent in there. That's all the way, like half the branch. So I'm like, okay, I'm taking, and I told her, she was all excited. So I took it and I brought it home, and it's now starting to show that green. So I'm waiting to see that grow out and see what it does. But that was in a tank with nothing introduced and nothing really like variant that I could find, and it just started doing it. Now, will it just lose that? I'm not sure as it goes into my system. So far, it's so good, but
it's hard to say, because the other factor is that some of these corals that may be the same species, there is a yellow one and a red one.
Yes. Yeah.
And is there a gene that, is it predetermined, or is there a gene that sort of can kind of flip? Or is it the coral, or is it the zooxanthellae? Is it these proteins that are infused into their tissue? I'm not really sure, but
and that's a milli, and then one of the things is you're trying to like go, how did this happen? I remember I had a splice that I'd got from someone, and I got 2 splices, and one of them died, and it was after that this happened. So was that like? The zooxanthella now roaming around, there's a tip, it finds it, and then, moves on in.
Yeah, so, and if it's another milli, potentially better probability of jumping. Yeah, have you tried, like, basically grafting any corals of the same species together?
No, not. I mean, I've had stuff together and see what it'll do, and I have found on the college fund, I've found that the green is most definitely like overpowering. Like there's way more green, which is same with the rainbow splice. That I've taken branches of that from chunks that are bigger, where I'm cutting it back to the 2 colors, and I've just stuck that into a colony of the same colony, or I have another colony that was that milli before it spliced that's in the other system. So I took some of that and stuck it in there, and it's basically just growing around it. Oh. So I'm waiting to see if that then like starts popping it out. But I don't think that might work, that it now like just rubs and they're actually growing, because it's the same thing. Yeah. But I don't know whether taking 2, tenuous and putting them next to each other.
I've tried it with millis before, and I find they either burn each other or they just like skin up to each other and don't really actually
and then one wraps around or nothing really happens.
But that's the thing. I know Top Shelf Aquatics is big on experimentation.
I was about to say Kevin. Kevin, I talk to Kevin every show that I'm at, like, hey, look what I got now. And he'll be like, oh, we've got this and this. And I do believe that it's like on their systems, which is way more than mine.
Huge amounts of systems.
That they've got so many pieces, which we've never, I don't think people have really been until this point. Like, you haven't had that much success with like wall-to-wall 8-foot by 4-foot systems that are all acros bumping into each other and thriving and flourishing. that have actually like now that protein is going around, and they've had a few things like I think he said PC Rainbow they've gotten that started going, and I know that there's a guy on Facebook, Coral Reefer, and he has the PC Rainbow too that has started doing that. That's doing the protein in there too.
Yeah.
So I think it's happening more and more.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, that's something we get to look forward to if we ever do kind of lose exports from overseas, is just kind of weird stuff that we can kind of cultivate in our own systems.
Yeah. And I'm interested on that. I mean, like the Jamie Craig's, and the spawning and everything, where, I mean, his opinion is that we're going to be able to like pick and choose colorations that we want to spawn together.
Yeah.
And then you'll get those different color splices, and you'll get like the different millies all mixing together and doing things. So I think that's fascinating. Like, that's where I enjoy, and like you showed me some pictures today of like wild stuff. Like I love getting in wild pieces and then just seeing what they turn into. And, rather than, I know that this is name the coral and this is what it's going to be. I'm just trying to chase to get that coloration and get that to grow, as opposed to this, like I can tell little sparks in this piece at the wholesaler, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to try that.
Yeah,
like,
and you're like, I might lose it. It might not, might not be anything good in long term. But
I'm so bad about my like putting stuff in my third system is basically a 36 by 42 kind of 16-inch tank, and it's kind of where all my client stuff that I get or stuff I acquire, and I just put it in there. And then I'm just so busy that I'm like, oh, I have $1,000 worth of colonies that I put in there, and I'm not getting to the dipping, and I'm not getting stuff done. Yeah, and I'm like,
so it's a lazy quarantine tank, is what it is.
Yes. And then I like, okay, I'm gonna dip it, and then sometimes then I'll do. A friend of mine did a basically an interceptor dip where it's half a pill per gallon, and I think it's like 10-15 minutes, but I would have to look that up to make sure.
Strong.
But after, but only for a short period of time. And that's his way of getting things in. So he'll like dip and then do the interceptor and then let it soak. And then, then basically he's already cut and replugged, and then everything will go straight into his system.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like the white bugs, black bug stuff just scares the
I think if you have like a QT system before you move anything over, it is nice to do an interceptor bath, which that's what I've been doing.
Yeah. So are you doing that same kind of?
What was it? A half a pill per gallon is quite strong. But then if it's just basically a dip, it's not, because like I would set up a system, with like say 20 gallons of water and put maybe a quarter pill in, but I would let them sit in there for 8 hours or overnight.
Yeah. And I've thought about that with one of my old like show tanks, where I could basically like set that up on the same system, and then you could just turn it off from circulating through, and then do the interceptor part, and then drain that out, entirely, and then fill it up, and then link it back into the system again.
Yeah.
And I've thought about doing that, but I don't know an easy way, and even the cost of doing your whole tank is another one. I mean, you buy Interceptor and you're $400 or $500 in buying it from Australia.
Well, I got a little tip for you, so I'll tell you after the episode about Interceptor.
Cool.
But actually, something that kind of an interesting thought I had is, I guess you probably stock a lot of your clients' tanks with your own aquacultured corals.
Yes. Yeah. Mostly. Yeah. I'll move things from client to client, and that's also a good part of my business. Is I have clients with, Euphilia that's 15, 20 years old, like huge colonies. So I get a lot of my stuff that's,
you're like, I got to trim this. We got to get rid of it.
And they don't care. Like really, they don't mind. And anemones is the other one. Like I have tanks with like rose bubble tips, rainbow bubble tips, green bubble tips, and they're overrun in these clients' tanks. And I'm just like, take them out, and that's what I bring shows. So all my stuff is fully aquacultured, which is what I try and tell people.
You have more than just the 3 systems in your garage then.
Yes.
Do you...
And I'll back up things now too,
Yeah. Is there any particular like coral that you know how it does for you, but you've just seen it do like incredibly well in some other system, and you don't really know why, or maybe you do know why?
Trying to think. I'm surprised sometimes at like the speed that stuff will grow. Mm-hmm. With like the tanks where it's like the traces are really low or something, it's dosing and it's keeping an alkalinity, but
less hands in the tank though. That's probably one factor.
Is very much a part of it, I believe. Mm-hmm. Lighting wise, like I've found like most clients, I'm doing a longer white period for them because they might want it in the evening, longer. Like blue or something. Yeah. So their tank will be lit up white, full whites for 8 to 10 hours. Mm-hmm. So maybe that's part of it too. I'm just now saying that and thinking it to myself in my head. Where
that is a long like peak period.
But you have to in a business, like why is this just blue and I can't see it, So where mine, I'll run a quick up, like I'll come on and a 45 minutes to an hour later, I'll be at full, I'll run whites for like 5 hours and then I'll dip down to a higher, like a little lower par and then run that for the rest of the day and then drop down in the evenings. But mostly blue on that, like 5 or 6 hours of white and then the rest of it blue.
Yeah, that's interesting. You mentioned you get it to its peak period pretty fast because is another sort of conversation I want to get into with another guest, but he was telling me that he swears by the photo period getting to its peak pretty fast, like within about half an hour of the morning, because it's just something about, I mean, I can't speak on the science side of it, but it has to do with like, the coral, being able to utilize the elements and grow and that photosynthesis period. It doesn't really need that long ramp up. It's like, the sun's up pretty quick in tropical areas. And I mean, you could argue, it kind of travels across the sky and like, it's on an angle and then it's above. But I mean, anytime I've traveled to tropical places, like it's pretty bright, pretty fast from a coral's point of view. I wonder if there's some, maybe I wouldn't say detriment to it, but lack of efficiency by having like a long ramp up period. Because my ramp up period's like, I don't know, I started thinking about it. I was like, crap, like I think my ramp up period's like 3 or 4 hours.
Right.
So,
which wouldn't happen. I mean, like I think of like getting up early. I get up early in the morning and it's dark, and then I look outside and it's light. To what degree it's not full sun, but it seems very quick to get to that from dark to sun up. So
it's fast.
On the nighttime I do it purely for myself because I'm not in there. Like I'll get home at maybe 6, we'll eat dinner, and then 8 to 10:30 I'm in the fish room.
Yeah, then it's tinker time.
Times. It's like blue, orange glasses, staring in, seeing what everybody's doing, like top down, inspecting everything, like and looking. And I know people diss it, but I find that the best way for me to see new growth issues or like something doing really well is like seeing it under the blue and then really just viewers and just being as close as I can to it.
Getting really close up for sure. I agree.
That's kind of a feeling.
What are you running? It looks like you mostly have Radions. Tell me kind of what sort of schedule wise and par wise you're kind of hitting your say acros with.
So I have on my 600, I have G5s.
Mm-hmm. Blues or pros?
I did blues.
Yeah.
And then for my clients, I did pros. I don't really see a big difference. You get a nicer white on a pro because it has both of the whites.
Yeah.
But I think that's diversifying. I think the worst marketing decision that's ever been done was Radion calling them blues because they're not blues. They're AB plus.
Yeah,
they should have been AB plus and pro.
Yeah, and that's I'll do a side elaboration here that the Radion G5 blue, when every channel is at 100%, is AB plus. Right. Which
everyone swears by.
Yeah.
But then everybody disses the blue.
Yeah.
That it's too blue.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if you want it to be too blue, but basically you're using more of your light than you are if you had a Pro, and you're having to turn those blues all the way up just to get some blue.
Yeah.
But for me, I use the blues, and I like them. But I get that, that extra blue that I want, and also get a good AB plus. So I'll be running 6 hours of 5-6 hours of AB plus basically on there.
Yeah.
On my
and
other
what's your
side,
kind of par or kind of hitting most of your
it's hard
acros?
because that tank has 628 pounds of live rock, but it's like
and it's
30
deep.
inches.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's 30 inches. So I'll be at like 2 something lower down, but I'll be mid range, like 354. And then I'll have that like 600-700 probably at the very peaks of some of this stuff, which I'm very picky about what goes that high up. But you have to get the mid range at that 350-400. You've got to be pretty high up there. And I have the lights. I think they're 16 inches off the surface on that one. I've also killed many G5s.
Really?
Yes, I've had.
So tell me how you kill them or avoid killing them, for that matter.
So if you had a Radion, my first, and this is just for me, like what I've found, what happens is the mesh that's on the top gets clogged, pulls in dust, which then stops the fan being able to work correctly.
Yeah.
The fan then overheats and melts the wire to it, and then stops working, which then overheats your unit and it'll kill your light.
Yeah.
The first thing I do when I get a light is just take out the metal grid off the top.
Oh yeah, because like realistically, like that that dust is in the room anyways. You know,
and
what
it's
are you
a
doing?
G4 now. Like I've had G4s where there's an inch of dust that I've gone to a client's and there's just all this dust hanging in there, and that thing's running like crazy.
I just vacuumed mine, and the ironic part of it is you vacuum them and then all this dust falls out of the sides of the
exactly. You're like,
the heat sink. You're just like, all of that dust that I tried to avoid. Yeah.
Right. Is there. So that's what I've found with that. And then my rep, because I have accounts with all these guys, like my rep sent me replacement fans. And I've had lights that have died, basically won't run, and then I've switched the fan out and then got them to work again.
Okay.
So I've found they have no parts for G4s anymore, and I think no parts for G5s, and they're only G6s.
Really?
That they're
the G5s and G6s are a pretty similar product.
I don't know whether, and I wonder the speed that they came out with that. I wonder if the fan was an issue. And whether I haven't kind of looked at the fan on there, or something along those lines. Because you would just melt out the wire, the wire underneath the fan, and with it sitting on the top, I think that a lot of salt creep gets in. Like it'll just settle around the fan or on the heatsink rather than the G4 that's kind of pulling it up and throwing it out.
Yeah, no, that's a good tip. I actually was just in my head doing the math on how many XR15s I have, and I think I have like 30 of them. Like somewhere between 26 and 30. None of them are more than about 2 years old. So I haven't lost one yet or had an issue with any of them. Right. But anything to kind of help keep them long term. I think that's interesting about taking out the little fan grate.
Yeah, I think it's just a safety thing. Yeah. But you can stick your finger in a G4 and it's gonna, you're gonna hit the fan.
Yeah.
So there's nothing impeding it there, but with it being on top, I don't know why they did that.
Yeah, like Radion probably would frown upon you taking those out, but
they're out of warranty anyway. So I'm like, this is what I'm doing, and I told him, I was like, I've found this to be the best thing to do, and there's only me getting up there.
Yeah, and it's like the other thing is maybe it's like slightly like a liability thing, like you got this moving part, and some kid could put their finger in there or something like that.
Which you could with a 4 also, and there's probably a better chance of coming up from underneath,
Yeah.
But on my other system, I run all G4s.
Okay.
And I love G4s. Like I don't think the 5s and 6s really.
You think they're probably the best gen of.
Yeah, in my opinion, and whenever I see them for sale, or I have a client that's about to break down their system, and I'm getting 4 G4 Pros from that, and I'm like, happy about it. But at the shows also, everything that on my show setups, it's all G4s. So I run that because the 5s and 6s is more of a muted blue coloration.
Yeah,
where with the 4s you get more of that crisp.
Yeah.
Which works. I think it disperses it. Seems to disperse it a little bit better. But on a show, like, you've really got to have that pop. That somebody walks.
Yeah, you want to present in the best light possible.
Yes,
for sure.
Which is, as I always say, the difference between, say, like your business and my side of it. And I'm doing mostly, shows. I would love to do more online, but it's just keeping up with messages and promoting is just really hard for me.
Shipping is stressful too.
And the shipping I hate, like I have to get home early from my maintenance client. So I'm putting off maintenance clients so I can get home to bag something and get it to UPS.
Mm-hmm.
And then
screws up some of your timing trying to plan your week.
Yeah. And if they lose it, then I lose that too. But I could lose a whole cooler of coral too. But
well, I feel like you're going to get a couple orders for that college fund piece from this episode, hopefully.
Yeah.
I mean, I always ask people, like, if there's any product that they swear by or have really noticed like a positive impact from. Is there anything you're dosing? Like, say you can name an amino or anything in particular?
I think recently the fluoride thing seems to meet, or the combination of all of that. I don't really do anything crazy. I did AcroPower for a while, and I just, for a long time, I had a habit, and I dosed it daily, and I just stopped, and I didn't notice any difference.
Yeah.
But then I hear also, like, it's supposed to be just one dose, like weekly, like instead of like on a daily basis. Yeah, I'm doing it that way. But I would say, like the benefit, and like I need to do that test and see if that really is, the fluoride side of it really is making that difference. But I Korkwasser, I would say Korkwasser.
Yeah.
Like when I started doing that, like growth took off like crazy.
Yeah.
Hitting that higher pH for sure.
Yeah, that's pretty undeniable. Yeah. I'm kind of like, I'm thinking about Kalkwaser lately and how nobody's really talking about some of the risks involved in it long term. So there's a couple guests I'm going to kind of get into that there with, because I think it's trending right now to kind of implement calc even on top of another system, but I don't think people are talking about some of the risks involved.
Like what would you say? Like,
I mean, I probably can't speak to the really specific, scientific side, but my understanding is that calc kind of precipitates some of your phosphates onto your surfaces, potentially precipitates other trace elements as well. And if you were to have the power go out, or for some reason have quite a big pH drop in a particular day, a lot of that stuff would be the first stuff to get dissolved back into the system and could crash the system. So that's kind of the short story of it. So the kind of, in theory, once you start dosing calc, you're kind of like addicted to it. And we don't see things that precipitate on our surfaces, but they're there.
Right.
And if you have a system that has, say you're doing some kind of, you have trace that's in your B ionic or something like that, but you're noticing this really, like, certain elements are quite elevated and some are quite low. Like the calc could be interfering with that. But again, like, I can't speak to the science specifically on this. This is just kind of like, but that the fact that calc, it does create so much reactiveness, and things are precipitating, and they're so hyperactive. It's like this crack for our tanks. I think there's things going on that could be potentially risky. So and then also like I'm adding so much 2-part and things like that that there's I'm really, I would say I'm like more of a farmer than I am a chemist. I'm really like, I never did good at chemistry or biology, and here I'm trying to figure it out and go off of. That's why I listen to as much as I can and try to take in as much, and I'm better at learning from that and then trying it as a trial and error rather than necessarily I'm well, and you're not full balls to the wall with calc either. You're kind of doing like the hybrid.
No.
Style.
Yeah, that's where I got stuck where I'm at. I don't want to be doing 10 gallons a day or something, because I could easily evaporate that much, I'm sure,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And I don't really want to, you know, but I mean, even on yours, I know you're doing all three, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's your,
yeah. It's so my redundancy through complexity style. Yeah. But yeah, actually I'm going to have Claude from Faunamaren on, and that's kind of a subject I want to talk to him about, because I know that he's not a fan of kelp, and they don't sell kelp, and there's a reason for that. And it all has to do with, you know, the ionic balances of our, you know, our elements.
And his boiling, isn't that the boiling method they do, and all that stuff?
And their boiling method, I think, is really well formulated. So there's so much stuff. I mean, I'm going to write like a little book in notes before I talk to him. So
that's going to be you need some alpha brain or something on that one to get yourself into that mode. But yeah, it's I don't know. I love the tinkering. I love the playing around with it. But sometimes you're like, am I doing making a mistake here?
You could be adding something that's maybe making something slightly worse, but it's not like, it's too negligible to kind of see like any real major difference. It's just, you know, the corals and the system is tolerating it, you know? Yeah. So like, what about feeding, like fish food versus your coral feeding? Do you what do you feed for fish food, which inevitably is going to be coral food in a way too?
Right. So I've always done like the Spectrum pellets, is just
old school
business wise too.
Yeah,
because I'm buying buckets of it for clients. It works in automatic feeders really well. So I have to have something that goes well. So I've always done that. I do pellets in the morning, and then I do frozen at night, which would be PE mysis, like the Hikari mysis, which gives like two different sizes. Like the flat pack, the big flat 40-ounce flat pack of PE mysis is like the most perfect size. Like it's a good bite-sized chunk of it.
But so for because your home tanks, you could obviously feed frozen every day, but your client tanks, it
depends on the client.
Yeah.
Like some clients are into it and some clients are not. And all they get is pellet food.
That's interesting to note though, because like maybe have you noticed that some of the systems that are almost entirely fed by pellets like still do quite well?
The best anemone tanks that I have are pellets only, automatic fed. Like, you know, that's where people are like, I'm putting a shrimp in my anemone and I'm like, I have them like splitting like crazy, and there's nothing getting fed into an anemone at all. It's just pellet food going in a tank, and not even a lot of the time. It's, you know, like I have to limit what goes in. I will try and do like, especially like with the Apex feeder, which I hate, but like other feeders, like at least 3 to 5 times a day that I'm doing pellet food in a tank. Just a small amount, just to kind of keep that going, especially if there's tangs in the tank. You know, like I feel like they need to eat multiple times a day to be good and healthy, you know? So yeah, I find it hard to believe that you need to be feeding them, and I will at home. Like I have a turkey baster and I go around and I'll drop some in there, but I really don't think it's that necessary. And I don't notice greater growth or happiness at the house, you know, here. So, so that's on that. And then coral food wise, I've never really done much. All I found was like Reefworks would just boost up your phosphate, like super quick. You'd feed it and the next day you're like through the roof, you know? Since recently, like when I was trying the bacteria stuff, I've done some of the Faunamaren stuff, and I'm trying to do some of their food and mixing that all together kind of in the nasty smelling, you know, mixture. And doing a little bit of that just to experiment. Like it might work. It might be good. And I haven't seen a spike in phosphate really going up there. From doing all of that.
Yeah, so. I don't know what it is about the Reefworks in particular, but it does. You know, a lot of people report the big phosphate spikes. So
I was like, you test one day and it's, you know, 0.7, and then you do Reefworks and then you test it the next day and it's like 0.15 or something. You know, and you're like, but I don't. Then I'm not necessarily testing day 3 or day 4. And see if it comes back down to a normal level. It's just kind of a weekly test, but I did that just as a an experiment. So
yeah, I picked up some Benepets from when I was at
yes,
Aquashella. Those guys are really nice, and the
pellets.
I should give them a shout out. I have some of the pellets, and then I have the finer like coral food.
I do the food in that whole mixture of stuff. And I've got Caleb from Vibrant Corals that I introduced you to. That the importer, they swear by Benepets. Like they get the big buckets of it, and they'll do a lot of that in all their systems. So
I mean, at the same time, I switch up what I feed the corals. I don't like. I think Benepets is really good, but it's like one formula,
one thing.
And so I actually really like the Captivate. I think it's the Integrate Reef that I think. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to say any is sort of the best or whatever, but it seems like that's a really clean, like really good feeding response I get from the corals from that one. So,
Yeah, I never noticed like everything opened up more, but I feel like I have a lot of PE like all day long. So I don't ever notice like is that, the question always is like, what is it really doing? Or how much are they taking in? Or is it just, then turn it into, nitrates and phosphate in the water.
I don't know. I mean, I'll look very closely. Like I definitely have seen like Goniopora will actually take it into the mouth and the polyp.
Yes.
And if you think about it, Agoni's like the polyps are like quite a bit bigger than an SPS, but they're quite a bit smaller than like a Euphilia or something like that. So it's not like it's almost like somewhere in the middle. So I'm not really sure, but
they've got to be taking something in. I mean, it has to be, but I don't know from that or when, or do you normally feed that late at night, or is that during the day?
I'll do it kind of like in the later part of the day. But I wonder if, I used to always feed coral foods when the lights were off. That was kind of my thinking, is because the axial polyps are out and that might be, the time the coral's probably more conditioned to feeding. But I mean, a lot of people feed just during the day, and it seems to work. So,
I've tried the Benepets pellets, and just like as I'm leaving in the morning, I'll just throw a few in the sump by my return pumps, so that as they kind of dissolve away, in my thought is that they'll dissolve there, and then just a little bit will get thrown up into the system during the day. I think that's their idea. They were talking about putting it in a feeder, like in your sump, and just letting it, on a daily or twice a day kind of period, going in there. So I don't know. We're all just kind of shooting in the wind, and just hoping something, sticks and
I mean, it's been a while since I've seen anything that I've changed that I would say was like super like obviously like, okay, now I'm going to do this. But, it's like, I feel like all of our tanks, like they kind of get to this point where we kind of have there's a style of the way our corals look, and like, if I took a coral from a friend's tank that was the same coral and brought it into my tank, it would eventually just start to look like the other ones of that type in my tank, just because that's my formula. But, how often do we do like a dramatic shift in how we do things? It's not very often, right? I mean, to be safe, we shouldn't. But every once in a while, I'm just like, maybe I want to do something totally different all of a sudden. Because
well, that's where I say like go to just water changes and like big water changes on a weekly basis, and then see like what the difference is. But I have the same thing. Like I have the same, like I have pink highlighter in my 600, and it's super pink, like the whole body of it, the coralite, like the whole way through it. And then in my 310, it's got the more blue, the darker pink, and then the polyps are just brownish, like they're a darker color polyp. Like it's a totally different coral. They came from the same frag.
So there's actually a note I have here that I think is an interesting sort of thought, is that do you think that coral color is completely related to the coral health? Because I think sometimes, like I've seen systems where I've seen very colorful corals, but not very good growth. And maybe not necessarily good polyp extension, but great color. And my theory on that is that those corals are producing some of those pigments to sort of protect themselves. But so I think we can probably agree most of the time a colorful coral is a healthy coral. But I think there's kind of this balance of like where sometimes, like, I think when my nutrients used to be lower, my corals used to grow faster. So okay. I wonder what the difference. I mean, most of them did. A lot of the acros did. Yeah. But like, what would you say is the difference between these systems? You could maybe guess has something to do with that pink highlighter.
I think, well, the one in the 600, I have like on a rack over to the side. So it's probably getting less par, but it's getting more color. Mm-hmm. The other one is right in the middle of the tank, right in the middle of all the light, but it's still only on the 310s, I'm at like 350, like across the whole tank. Because they're all racks, and I actually made PVC racks that are just straight pipes with holes. Yeah. So all of my colonies that I'm growing out are on there, so there's no rack below that, and it's getting all that flow. Yeah. And I've found that like the happiness and growth that I got once I did that and got things off of racks, that you're not dealing with the algae on a plug, you're not dealing with the algae on a rack. And I could fit just as many colonies doing it that way.
Yeah, that's good. Because, that's what I noticed. All of Top Shelf's farm is like that for acros. And it's like...
And that's like a 5-way, and then they're splitting out from there. Like I saw it on what's Anne's Living Reef. They did it where it's just basically like parallel PVC that you build up, and then parallel pipes, and then just drill the holes, and then I basically just put a little piece of glue on the plug and then stick it into the hole and then glue it in, and then when I need it I can just pop it off. And it's worked phenomenal. I've tried the Top Shelf way, but you really need that 4-foot like wide tank to be able to spread that out and do it.
But I mean, what that is kind of achieving at the end of the day, and I guess how this relates to the average hobbyist, is that you're getting the flow through the coral in the way that it would more be like in a display with good
most definitely.
aquascape.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah. Which is on my other tank is that way,
Yeah. And as a result, you're not going to have like dead flow areas, because if you have a big line of just colonies in a row, or the old fruit stand style aquascape back in old school tanks where you just cover the back wall in rock.
Right. Flow is flow. Yeah. I still think flow is like almost number one in my opinion of getting that flow around in the tank and trying to get enough without it hitting too hard.
I mean, that's the thing that I have shot for as opposed to doing a system like yours, because I think I've come to realize that my frag systems I kind of treat them like a display, and I want them to look pretty.
Right.
And I don't really want to see a bunch of like PVC piping and shit.
Yeah. It was hard for me it was really hard for me to do it. But with it, like my tanks are 25 inches deep. Yeah. And part of the reason for that is that I could have a 12-inch tall rack and then have a colony that it's not peaking right at the surface. Yeah.
And deeper tanks give you way more options for flow variability too, which is nice. Yeah.
Definitely. And but it still makes it hard. 8 feet long is borderline like hard to get a good amount of flow.
That's a distance to travel without having a re-upper somewhere halfway through. Yeah.
Interesting story. I just got the Hydro Wizard, the Pantaray.
I don't think I know that.
So it's a German powerhead that Unique Coral import, and it's 15,000 gallons an hour. It's like the same model as the Abyss, like the Abyss Cannon one. Yeah. So I just did theirs, and it's the Hydro Wizard 63, and it's 10,000 gallons an hour. And I put it at the very top of my 600, and it will put a 2-inch wave the entire 10 feet of that tank.
Wow, so you can actually see the wave kind of curving.
You can see it rolling, like nothing else on it. It's on like a 2-second pulse, and it's like, and it's just amazing. Like,
and I think, I think that flow, similar to lighting, it's not about the amount, it's about the distribution. You know what I mean? Yes. And like, I think definitely. Because I have my corals are more in a flatter space, I have to crank a ton of flow to get that distribution. To get it to get through everything. But I think there's I think there's some corals that need a lot of flow, but
and it was tricky because I've never had it before where, I mean, it's not even pointing directly at it, but it was starting to take the tip, like the tissue off the tips of some of this stuff.
Oh, wow.
So I was having to really tweak. That was like almost 3 feet away. Like that's how much this thing was like going. And so I've got it in the perfect spot where it's basically the top corner and it's blowing the entire length of the tank. And then I've got 3 MP60s alternating around in that too, and then some waves and that. Yeah. But that big tank it's great, except they're just so hard to get enough flow. Yeah. Like an MP60 gets like not even halfway to the tank, and it's
kind of dissipated. Like, yeah. That's kind of why I went with, because I have the 2 6-foot tanks that are back to back. That's why I did that instead of one big massive 12-foot tank.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah. And you can use gyres. You can get really good flow going and stuff with that. So I agree on that.
I actually wish Max Spec would make a larger size gyre again, because I actually have another big 10-foot tank at the local fish store, and I've got gyre 280s on that, and they're freaking awesome. They're insanely. I keep
asking them, if you look it up, there was a Max Spec like industrial. And I think it was like the 14,000 or something, but it was 2 feet long. And I kept asking Carl View when I would see him, or anybody, and I'm like, when is this thing coming out? Because it was like a massive amount of flow that it would give. That would be good for, like, if you put one on each end of a 10-foot, it would just rock the whole tank.
Yeah.
And I've never been able to track it down.
I mean, that'd be super nice for you, for like clients too, because like, I mean, anything that you can replace like 4 things or 2 things with one, you know, and I'm on a big kick right now of kind of trying to eliminate power supplies and things like that. So I'm excited for the Kraken, and I got one of those Hydros Wave, the 4-pump engines, and pulled out some of my gyre power or the controller for those, because they suck anyways. And then actually the great thing with the 4-pump Hydros is you can hook it up to those battery backups, the ice cap battery backups. So you have that, like you can battery back up 4 of those pumps, and I think you can put them in series so you can use multiple if you want to. So
I really want to give the Hydros a try, but I'm just so invested. But you're never gonna
you don't need the controller to run the 4-pump. It's a standalone thing.
It'll do it. Okay.
Yeah, so you don't need the controller. That's a nice thing.
I wish there was a better power head that, like, I like the waves for the Apex, but they just die after.
Yeah, and they just shoot in one direction and kind of.
Yeah, but it's a flush kind of magnet. It works with the Apex. There's no power supply.
Yeah.
You know, all of those benefits, but they just die. Like,
it's another thing, because the Apex can warn you if the pump's offline or whatever. It's another potential thing that's in your cloud, which is nice. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So but that's, flow is always hard, and getting people to spend a lot of money after the fact is not always the easiest thing. You know, like why do I need to buy another $500 pump or something? Gets kind of tricky on some of the clients. Well,
it's funny when you're at the point like where I'm at, where I'm like, I'm fantasizing about getting better power supplies. I'm like, sweet.
Here's me, like $2,500 for a power head. Well, fuck yeah, I'm in. Count me in. You know,
I just want less things plugged into the wall. I remember I had a friend's dad that had come and checked out this is my old garage, and he's an older guy, and he goes in, he's like, why are there so many things plugged into the walls? It's just a fish tank. And it's just like, it's like,
how do you do on power? Like, did you go in and redo your entire system?
What do you mean, like, as far as how my setups are, like how my garage is
powering? Because it's on your house, right?
Yeah.
Is it part of your house? Yeah. So
when we bought the house back in 2020, I had an electrician buddy run a sub panel to our panel. So we had a 200 amp panel, and then we ran a 60 amp sub panel. So the nice thing is, if I ever need to add another circuit on, we just drop a new breaker in and run some BX, and we're good to go. And I got a buddy that's an electrician that's a reefer too. So he
one of my clients. One of my clients is an electrician. So we trade on. They just because I would trip the whole house. I had gotten to the point where I plugged one more thing in and I would trip the whole house.
No, you don't want that.
No. So my wife would be like, can I turn the air fryer on? And I'm like, let me turn off radions. You know, I got to that point. So
that's not good.
Yeah, not at all. And I'm like, don't catch on fire. So I had them come in and they took the wire from the meter out and upped it, and then upped my panel, ran another panel to the back of my fish room, added 125 amps, and then put in 10 dedicated breakers to dedicated plugs. Mm-hmm. And I've got that separated from lights to pumps. And then I put on the mini split, which I know you have. Like I have a 2-ton mini split on a 10 by 20 room. But all of that then runs onto a generator plug that I can plug in and power up the whole thing from my generator. So, nice. But yeah, that was my big expense this year, was like taking the power thing out of my concern.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
It's huge. Yeah. Like now I can plug things in and I'm not worried what's running or what's going on. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, no, that's a good place to be. Yeah. I wanted to ask, actually, we'll probably close up pretty soon because it's getting a little bit late.
We've been going on a while.
Yeah, but I guess we'll do rapid fire questions quickly. But I just wanted to ask, because I'm kind of curious about this. Like I asked a lot of people this, like, what's your kind of go-to sort of strategy if you see, saying, let's maybe focus on acros. If something's kind of not looking so good, like lacking polyp extension or losing color, like whereas the overall system seems to be doing well, like outside of pests, which I think, let's put that outside. What are some of the things you would kind of consider?
It depends. And I know we've discussed it, like the whole, like the bacterial thing that we seem to be getting. That has been, I feel like everybody seems to be like having some kind of issue with that.
Yeah. And there's so much talk about use of antibiotics right now. I'm just kind of, I wonder if there's anything else we should be focusing on.
That's what that's why I'm going down this path of, trying to add bacteria. That personally, my opinion of what's kind of going on is, since Indo opened up, I think a lot of people like bringing stuff in. There's been some weird bacterias coming in, and I think that is, you can't. I feel like you can't really dip that away. Even if you buy a frag from someone, it could be something that's coming in and having that kind of issue. Not that's that's kind of the stuff turning black, which is kind of the telltale sign.
Yeah.
Yeah. And inside on a table, like it'll start on the inside parts of the branches and stuff, you'll start seeing it. But I've found only thing that going through quarantine wise of stuff like that is like doing the Cipro or doing the antibiotics, which nobody wants to do.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I don't, if something's going, that's the only way really to stop that from going.
And my concern with it, is, it's not only the sort of potential bacteria resistance to it, but your biofilms on your surfaces that sort of like make your system function are so important, and you're really impacting those with the treatment.
You're just nuking it. Yeah.
You're and that those are the kind of things that make a tank really run well, I think.
Yeah.
So
and if you did that to one tank, and you just move anything from another tank, like you're just reintroducing that same thing probably back over from one to the other. I don't know how anybody else is able to deal with that. I've just heard like a few people have seen issues or had some issues, and there's no natural fix. I don't find.
Well, since I wiped out, we talked about this. We both did end up doing an antibiotic treatment on our systems, and I was able to eradicate, I would say 90% of that black base thing.
Yes. Yeah.
And then since then, I've been dosing like a few different brands of bacteria.
Exactly the same.
And I'm just hoping that maybe now, like, I'm sure some of those strains that did the black base thing are still kicking around, but I'm hoping that some of these other strains
overpower them.
Yeah, overpower them, populate more.
Yeah. I've tried the what's the biome test, the micro, the not bionics. What's the
aquabiomics? Yeah,
aquabiomics. Yeah, I've tried that, and I don't know whether it's me, but like both times it was just like I got a failed test. One worked, and it was like you have very low bacteria in your tank, which I've heard a lot of people that have very successful tanks say the same thing.
Was this post doing any kind of antibiotic, or was this before you had done that?
Before. I've done this in the past. And then I actually did it on the quarantine system when I was seeing things, just to try and see what it is. And I did the swab around, and then there wasn't enough on the swab, I guess, to actually get a test. Mm-hmm. So then he sent me new ones to do, and I just haven't done it since. I mean, I know we have to keep sending things in to try and get that history going.
Help him build his database. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but then in your mind, you're like, I'm going to wait until there's something, and then try and, swab that where it's going on, and then see what comes of it. And I just haven't had that opportunity to do that. And you're either jumping on it to fix it or not thinking about it. And then you're like, oh, well, that was too late now. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, I don't know the answer to all of that. I mean, I've known a couple of people. I don't know if they remember Drew Canali. Do you remember Drew Canali?
No,
he was he was 4 or 5 years ago, but one of the kind of top home grower guys. His home records were amazing. The best Rainbow MV was his were the best. That's where everybody got theirs from. The Matt V stuff. Cool. And I remember messaging with him, and it was right after Indo opened, and everything that he had tenuous-wise or got wiped out. And he could not figure out what it was, and I'm just wondering if that was that issue.
Like everything else kind of checked out on paper.
Yeah, nothing was wrong. And I think he's out of the hobby because he lost almost all his stuff.
Yeah.
Without being able to go I'm going to Cipro this, or I'm going to do hit this really hard, because you're going to see everything snowball out,
It's the tough thing with when some things are starting to kind of go sideways a little bit. You might make a little bit of an adjustment or a change, or test a bunch of stuff, and the next day it doesn't really look any better, and the next day it looks maybe a little bit worse, and then it's and then another one doesn't look as good, and you're just like, what is going
it's next to it, one next to it, and you're like, oh, that's not working.
It's a tough.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know the answer. I kind of scares me on bringing in wild stuff almost now without basically I feel like you should be, or if we could figure out some kind of treatment, whether it's iodine, whether it's a Cipro dip or something that would take that new tissue and because you can dip it out, and I'm sure it's the bacteria is still living in the tissue of the coral. You're not nuking that out.
I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, you could say you brought in a bunch of acros and you did a Cipro bath on them in a higher concentration for an hour or something. You might actually be messing up the microbiome of the coral too.
And then you lose the coral. Yeah. And you're really messing with it at that point.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I actually have some Indo acros we were talking about coming next week. So I'm kind of well, they're not going in the main SPS system. I cleared space in the LPS system right in the middle.
Yeah, I know you do the LPS side of it for a while.
Yeah, and I added some extra lights to the middle of the tank. So it's all primed for acros now. So
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I that side just kind of worries me. And I think a few people have run into that, kind of growers and farmers that are kind of seeing some of that kind of popping up, and I it's not of anybody's fault or anything. I don't know what's coming in.
Yeah.
And it could be you just buy an aquacultured frag that's been around for years, but it's in the same system as one of those, and then you're bringing that into your system.
Yeah. Well, and at the same time, I have a friend that has corals only from my tank, and I think because one of the corals that had that black base issue was the confetti, and I put a frag in his tank, and it just that issue went away right away. It just grew and looked the way it was supposed to.
So is that something we're tinkering a lot, or we're we're growing so much stuff that we're low on? It wouldn't be bacteria, but we're deficient of something that's given that ecosystem.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I've gotten more on the train of, along with this infusing more bacteria into the tank, maybe adding some carbon sources too is a good way, because
the guy you were talking that was on last time. He was
because I think the carbon sources, I mean, you can't pick what bacteria the carbon sources are going to feed, but I kind of get the impression that I kind of get the impression, like, especially since I've like treated the system with antibiotics and then started dosing bacteria, I feel like things have looked better once I've done carbon dosing as well.
Right.
So I feel like it's favoring those better strains.
That's good. Yeah, I might have to give that a shot.
Yeah.
The other one, just quickly, that we were, that we'd heard, like, I know Pauletta was talking about it being in the frozen food.
Yeah.
And then like microwaving your food. And I'm actually doing that just cause, but I feel like then what are you doing to the food? And
I wondered about that too, because it's like raw food, and then it like is just very slightly cooked.
Yeah. And then you're like, well, he says 15 seconds, but should I do 30? Should I do, how much water is in there, and what's the best kind of way to do that? But then I still don't see like a frozen block of PE mysis. Like, I feel there's a better chance this is all coming from wild corals than it is from frozen food.
I think so.
I don't know his source of that kind of claim. So
I'll talk to him about it. We're gonna have him on soon, so
I'll
be able to get into that. But yeah, the idea is that maybe some of these frozen food products have some bacteria, and that you can microwave it to kind of essentially sterilize it before you feed it. Yeah. After you thaw it out, then microwave.
Yes, thaw it out first, and then. But okay, do you want 50 mLs of water, 100 ml? Like, what are you then microwaving?
Yeah.
To what,
no, that's not an exact science. I'll have to get into some
get it
specifics.
From Mike.
Definitely.
I'm sure Mike's podcast will probably go like 5 hours. So he'll keep you going.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to keep you too long, so it is like kind of late for you. Do you want to just call it, or do you want to whip through a rapid fire question session?
No, let's go. I'm in. I've got time.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so, and remember to answer. You can give me like a weird left field answer if you want. Like, okay, so favorite fish.
Flamingo tang.
Okay, nice.
They're like the biggest puppy dogs you can imagine.
Yeah, they are.
And they. Yeah, go ahead.
Favorite SPS, if you could pick you can say species or a name coral or whatever.
Probably millies.
Yeah.
Like, you always go back to that. Like, I'd say that. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, there's a few I love, but I would say as
I
far
love
as
Speciosa
your
for the
staple.
I love.
Yeah. But your
Speciosa
staple
for the
SPS that you were attracted to the first time you saw it was probably a millie. Yeah.
A hairy millie is like, that sounds kind of weird, but yeah, hairy millie just flowing in the breeze is just phenomenal.
Totally.
And the color variants and so on. So, and they're easy to get that color out of.
Yeah, and I would say also millies are a very good indicator of the health of your acros too.
Most
because,
definitely.
That polyp is going to extend and be out more. Yeah, totally. Okay, favorite LPS?
Space Invader, Pectinia.
Oh yeah, that's a good classic. Definitely.
Yeah, I grow so much of that and sell so much of that, and it's one of the only ones I have that are basically in one of my systems.
Yeah.
That I love it.
Yeah,
and then
a cool
you just got to keep it away from everything. And I have a pair of clowns that host I have one that's about this big, and the clowns just host in there, and they love it. So.
Yeah, cool. Okay, favorite softie?
Zoas, I guess. I'm not a big Zoa fan, but if I had to pick a softie, it'd probably be.
Yeah, there's some pretty amazing ones.
Would that be classed as softie? Is that?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's how much I know.
Yeah, I just got a little mini colony of those strats, and they're pretty. They're pretty amazing. They're pretty alien looking.
Yeah. Side thing. I have a Vietnamese restaurant that I do their tank, and I walked in and I like go to service their tank, and there's a round tile with like 10 strats on it. And I'm like, I text the owner. I'm like, why do you have like $200 piece like Zoas in your tank? And he goes, it was a gift. Random. Like I don't know from who or where.
Yeah, probably didn't get quarantined straight in there, but whatever. I'm sure it's
They've
good.
done all kinds of weird stuff in there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. Okay, so favorite light source or product, you would say, and you can go back any period. So the G4s, Radions.
Yeah, I think so.
Nice. Okay.
I love halides, but I only did it for clients, and the side effects were and the chillers and but I would love it if I would love to experiment with that, but I would say Radion G4s.
Okay.
All day.
What would you say is your favorite product line for additives? Like if you were going to just pick one product line to kind of run an entire system on.
Probably, I'm loving the Fauna Marin.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm only kind of going into that, and then the Moonshiners, but for the variety of different things, I'm really liking.
Yeah.
Like if I'm looking for something, I'm looking at Fauna Marin now.
Yeah.
So through CoralView, I have an account with CoralView, so I'll get all that stuff.
Yeah, they took
you
they took on Fauna recently, I think.
Yeah.
They might have had Aquaforest before that, and I think that's where they switched from. I could be wrong on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe so.
Yeah.
Didn't I go to Aperture?
Maybe. Yeah.
I
don't know.
Did the BRS and those guys take that? I don't know.
Anyways, yeah, I agree. Fauna's great. Big plug for them. Favorite salt? I mean, even if you think back and span over the past kind of decade or so, what would you say?
I love the big bags of Tropic Marin, like the store use stuff.
That's what I'm using.
And and I talked to Lou.
Yeah.
But you're supposed to carry like 10 barcode, like 10 products for the store to be able to get that. So the store that I work with, that I get all that stuff from, they're not carrying it. So I've got to work on him a little bit more. But then I kind of went back to just Reef crystals because I use so much.
Yeah. So, yeah. No, that's fair.
But I
probably
loved
the best economy salt. So and some people might even argue it's the best salt. I don't know.
It's not that expensive for the Tropic Marin and in the big bags. It's just
it's good.
I used that for a few years and I loved it. So
yeah, I just bought enough of it that I'm good for a couple of years at my rate. So
so
that works for me.
My rate is like it's just ridiculous. So it stuck on that. So
I'm gonna assume your favorite aquarium controller is going to be the Apex system.
Yes, the love-hate relationship. For sure.
Yeah. But it's working for you. You've gotten them a lot of business over the years. A lot of systems. Favorite wave pump? We kind of talked about wave pumps, but what do you kind of...
the Pantaray I love.
Well, let's say for the average hobbyist.
They make a smaller one. It's only like $1,500.
Yeah.
I'd have to say probably the Vortex, like the MPs.
Yeah.
For longevity. I've got some Vortex that are still on the white controller.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I've got some that I think are 15 years old,
Yeah. Maybe you'll mess up the wet side every now and again, and you can buy either side. But the MP60s I've got and MP40s have run forever.
Yeah. Totally.
I don't like that you can't point them or do much with them, but other than that, I think,
they do. I feel like they pull more back on their way out than a lot of other pumps do, and that's something people don't give them enough credit for. They have a lot of backflow. For whatever reason, the way that it works. Totally. I probably concur on that, but gyres are a close second for me.
Just the cleaning of gyres drives me crazy.
I agree.
The time.
Yeah.
I love them, but also I hate them. And on a maintenance side, I do it all day, so then I get home and then have to do it on my stuff.
Yeah.
So as little as I possibly can.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Okay, most hated pest.
I would probably the Monty nudibranchs. Because they'll travel. They're not just if I've had a client with them and we basically just had to rip everything out.
Yeah. Enough peppermint shrimp will take care of them though.
Yeah, we've done that too. It's just getting it in a speedy amount of time. But yes, that will definitely help. An Aptasia, for clients and for me is
that must be really important from your side as doing maintenance. Hey, and so this is don't ever let one friggin' Aptasia get in there.
And the other one that's not as big of an issue for me, but for clients is the white little starfish.
Yeah,
they hate them because then they'll be like
Harlequin
200 on the glass, and they're like, get rid of this.
But you could just do a rent a Harlequin, just have a few of them that you bounce them from tanks to tank. They bring the population down, you move them to another tank,
Yet another side note, I have a client that's a hospital, and I actually leased the tank to the hospital and put a Harlequin in. And now the staff of the hospital love the Harlequin so much, they all go try to find it, that I'm having to take
Asturinas from another tank.
Asturias from my other system and client systems and take them to their tank now. Like I'm actually feeding that thing, like putting it in instead of it just taking them out. So there's no, they don't want it coming out of there.
There's those certain things that are just like a good party trick, that we have in our tanks. Like look at this frickin' thing. This looks like it is not from Earth.
Right. Those like black sea slugs that I have, like they last for years and years, and they just, they shit out all the sand as they go along. But people love those. Like anywhere I put those, that's what people are searching for.
Yeah.
So
kind of funky, weird stuff. Totally.
Yeah, shrimp, all those kind of things that they're like trying to find, with things that they don't see very often, or like the things they're hunting down. So,
yeah, totally.
So yeah.
All right. Well, the final question is the big question. So if you were in a life circumstance and financial position, would you set up something like the 14,000 gallon Polo Reef?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, in a heartbeat. Yeah. I would. I think it'd be fun.
Yeah. Would you do anything differently?
No, I don't think. I think he's doing like the best he can. Maybe flow. Like I'm sure that if you asked him, he may have done more with flow, because he keeps adding in all
he's going to keep changing
biz and stuff. Yeah.
I guess more
he's
what
adding
I mean
in those
is
huge things,
Yeah. More what I mean is from a design perspective, would you do it different dimensions or something like that?
I like it. I kind of like the whole thing of it.
It's
like
deep.
I'm not.
Yeah.
Yeah. The depth of it is what kind of, to me, is that like every person that comes and talks to me, they're like, I want a tank from like floor to ceiling. You're like, okay, well, how many millions you got? Because that's what it's going to be, and it quickly changes from that, but I kind of like what he did. I'm sure I'd tinker it with it some, or if, find a client that wants to do it, but I don't even know if I'd want to do that, because that's way too much more of my time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like there's a guy that did an Austin guy that did a 5,500 gallon.
It's pretty big.
They got it built, and it was that same kind of. It was like fiberglass. There's a company out of California that do all the displays and stuff. They actually installed it, and it's a guy that I know that does maintenance that does it. But I can only imagine he's there like at least a day a week.
Yeah.
Like a lot of his time goes to that. And I feel like if that goes away, then, you're trying to scramble to get that money back.
Yeah. Yeah.
And after a couple of years, I don't see that much going on. So unless you've got that client that's like Andrew, that's, buying all these colonies I have friends that he's bought stuff from, and it's a pretty phenomenal amount of investment.
It's amazing, because it's like everything, like from the corals to the fish to the wood on the floor that's built around it, and the room. There's just no.
The back room is amazing. Like I just want to hang out in the back room, and all that
wild
stuff.
Yeah, totally.
But I also have that argument. I always say to people, like, I have clients that have very fancy cars, and the money that they spend on that compared to what he's spending on this, it's very comparable on that like level of wealth.
Yeah, and I feel like the Reef thing to me is way more rewarding, and Andrew's really involved with the tank,
very much so.
But he probably could, if he wanted to, he could hire more people that were really experienced people. But I appreciate and I like the fact that he, wants to get his hands in the tanks.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Did you see that his the Picasso tank? The tank that he got with all the yellow and the white, the one that he spent so much money on?
I don't think I saw. There might have been an article on it or something.
Yeah. It was the aberrant. It was all the different. It was the koi. It was big. It was a sailfin, and he paid a lot of money for that. And it's changing back to its original color.
Oh,
like it's turned like almost to like a normal sailfin. Yeah. Like he just posted recently that it's like. So that is, I would imagine, something environmental that they're thinking with those variants.
Interesting, because you almost kind of collect a little bit of data from an experience like that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If it is something environmental.
But I'd like to know, like, Jason Fox has a huge collection of, like, koi tanks and that stuff, like, everywhere. Like, that's his thing.
I didn't know.
And I need to ask Jason, like, does he have that kind of experience with some of that stuff?
Yeah,
and
I wonder. Yeah,
they're a different tang than the sailfin, I believe. So
yeah.
So it may be just this one, but I know he spent a lot of money on that fish, and I mean took it for injections. Like he did a lot of work on that fish to get it there, and then now it's like changing colors.
Yeah,
so.
If I find the article, I'll put it in the show notes so we can take a look at it.
He just did it recently. It was like he did a post about it recently.
Yeah.
So about it changing, but originally I think did Jake do an article on that? Possibly.
Okay, so this a while ago then.
Yeah, or I'll find it and I can send it to you if I
cool.
If I see.
Sounds good.
Cool.
All right, man. Cool. Well, thanks so much for the chat, and
that's awesome.
we'll follow up after this and figure out the ends of it. But thanks for making time, and
all right.
have a good night, man.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Cheers.
All right. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this conversation with John Yull of Reefworks Corals. If you're in the US, make sure you go to his website at reefworkscorals.com and then go to events, and you can see all the many, many, many events in different cities he will be attending and selling his awesome corals at. Also, check out his Instagram at reefworks_corals. And if you have any suggestions for future guests, want to just ask us a question, make a suggestion, make a criticism, whatever you want to say, feel free to reach out at beyondthereefpod@gmail.com. Remember to like, share, subscribe, and leave us a review. And if you're looking for high-quality aquacultured corals in Canada, please check us out at fraggarage.ca. Hope to hear from you soon.